everyone. Thanks for joining us today to talk about ClimateTech as introduced. I'm Tasmin Lockwood. I'm a freelance tech journalist with a specialty in ClimateTech, so I'm excited to be here shaping the conversation with a wonderful panel. What might be easiest is if we just do a quick fire elevator pitch of introductions. Morten, do you want to start? And we'll pass it down the line. Explain who you are and a little bit about the firm that you represent.
Thanks a lot for having me here. My name is Morten. I'm a general partner and co-founder of a early stage VC fund out of Northern Europe called ClimateTech Capital. We're based in Copenhagen, in Stockholm, in Berlin, and in Oslo. So we cover 80% of what we cover is Northern Europe. We're raising our fund 2 now. Happy to be here. I think that's it.
Great, awesome, thank you.
I feel like we need to kind of wake up the crowd. It feels very drowsy in here. It almost feels like the dip of ClimateTech already in this room. Yeah, so I'm Sarah. I'm the co-founder of 2Zero. We recycle lithium-ion batteries. We're 3 years in, and we're scaling more than ever. The typical thing that a founder would say. But yeah, it's deep tech hardware. We use chemistry to extract raw materials out of the lithium-ion batteries, lithium and graphite, none of which we have here in Europe. We're importing everything from the Far East, from China. And we see this as a sovereignty topic, resilience topic, impact topic, but we're going to get more into that during the panel. So very looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anupam Bhargava. I'm the CEO of Kirkby Climate. Kirkby Climate is the impact investment arm of the Kirk Christiansen family, the family that is the founders and owners of the Lego Group. We invest in energy transition, land sustainability, and circular plastics. And because we have a single LP and a very long-term horizon, we also approach our investments as systemic investors who can actually connect the dots across the value chain to actually deliver impact at scale.
Nice, thank you so much. So, as the name of the panel suggests, we're digging into the dip in climate tech. Whether or not that exists is, the numbers speak for themselves. But there's definitely more going on under the hood. So I would like to just, wake up the crowd a little bit. Can we get a show of hands of people who think there is truly a dip in climate tech? The majority of people. So that's great. You're going to learn a lot then. We're going to unpick that, basically. So starting with you, Morten, tell me, do you really think there's a dip in climate tech valuations, activity, and what does that mean for founders and investors?
Yeah. I mean, I might agree that there is a dip. It's not a collapse as such. It's more, as we see it at least, a recalibration of the climate tech scene. So we've gone through a period of the last 5 years where we've seen some hype in the area, and I think right now we can talk about the end of the era of climate tourisms or climate investors that are more tourists. By this, I mean, you've seen a lot of, in the hype starting 4 or 5 years ago, you saw a lot of generalist investors going in, typically tapping into the software part of the climate tech scene, the SaaS models they knew from their generalist approaches. Whereas, and that is some of the areas that we see hyped, and also we see a big dip in now, right? So I think fundamentally, we've gone through a cycle where investors bought the great story and the great narrative, and right now we're recalibrating, and right now fundamentals are back in focus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're going to jump over to the end just for another investor perspective. Obviously, you operate a evergreen fund. So Morten discussed fundamentals there, but how is what you look for changing because of this supposed dip?
Yeah, I think it's a great build on what Morten said, because it is about the fundamentals. And if you start with the problems first, we as an industry have not succeeded in addressing impact at scale yet. Really addressing climate, whether it's CO2 abatement, plastic pollution avoidance, or whatever KPI you're actually driving towards. And I think one of the reasons is you simply need to have a longer horizon to do that.
Yeah.
And so as Morten said, the tourists may leave, but those who are committed for the long run, who really understand the problem, the fundamentals, and how you solve them, especially with a systemic approach, I think there's incredible investment opportunities for us. So while we, of course, are aware of what's happening in the world around us, we're also not scared off by it because the intrinsics are still really good for climate tech investing.
Well, you know, climate change is happening, regardless of whether we believe it's man-made or not, which I hope everybody on this stage does. But you know, the business case is clear. You talked a little bit about software as well, and basically this, investor, like tourists, sort of pulling back. So Sarah, as somebody that's building hard tech, deep tech, tell me, what do you take away from this moment?
I think we're talking about marketing branding, right? ClimateTech is a new term that came along in the last maybe decade or so. If you just look back over 100 years ago, Nikola Tesla, inventor of the electrical engine that everybody's using now to drive the electrification of vehicles, did Nikola Tesla call it ClimateTech? No. He's also the inventor of hydroelectrical electricity in the Niagara Falls. Did he call it ClimateTech? No. Who was the investor? JP Morgan. Rich guy who just believed in that you can create an entire new industry and overlap the historical technologies with a new theme that is more efficient, more time-saving, and making actually more money with a new industry. So I think like we need more strength and more resilience within the investors.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm super happy to see that legacy families that have a lot of money to go into this theme with a lot of patience and really believe in disrupting, sorry for the buzzword, but it's literally disrupting old infrastructure, old themes, old technologies, and that's what we believe in. So at 2.0, we are introducing a new fundamental recycling scheme that has never been done before. Until today, you throw batteries in hot temperatures, 1,400 degrees. We call it, you burn batteries. That's called recycling as of today. We all know that's just fooling, that's marketing. What we do is we literally recover the raw materials. That is regenerating materials. Only like that, with the price point of the mining industry, we can actually create a new industry. So that's something that we believe in at 2.0, that I believe in as a deep tech founder that happens to be in the climate tech, let's say, sector. But I see myself as I'm disrupting the industry.
Nice. Anupam, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just as Sarah said, you know, this is about value creation. And value creation is not a trend or a fad. And the bottom line is if you're solving a problem that needs solving and someone's willing to pay for it, it's going to be a good investment. So is the pain point acute enough that you're willing to take action, someone's willing to invest, and someone's actually willing to buy the goods that you have to sell?
So let's hone in on that finance point a little bit more. So obviously we do have representation from two different types of fund structures. What does the capital stack look like for climate tech companies? Right now, you know, there are non-dilutive options, project-based financing. We've always had a bit of a growth gap here in Europe, especially when it comes to deep tech. So what are you seeing in terms of the investments that are like the types of deals, the structure of deals? Yeah, you can jump in.
Yeah, I'll kick it off and you guys can chip in. I mean, we look at hard tech primarily, so it's a combination of hardware-oriented stuff with often deep tech elements or even deep tech investments, right? And many of these are, of course, on average, a little bit heavier on the capex and the needs for such things. But so a part of the journey that we take our founders on is basically also a financial journey, how how to look at the capital stack when we enter, where it's still primarily VC equity type of stuff. But over the next 2-3 rounds, when we're the main part of the journey, how do we help our founders prepare on that journey, also from a finance perspective? So that includes what you mentioned rightly, right? So it's a combination of grants, debt, equity, and so forth. So that kind of journey is immensely crucial with, let's say, within the hard tech stuff. Another point maybe I want to make is that we do a lot of, or at least a part of our investments are done within what you could call infrastructural models, right? So the business models are resemblance of what you know in classic infrastructure, but it still needs to return venture-like returns. And that balance we're striking by typically going in early, taking a holdco, topco exposure, and then helping orchestrate in some cases, the SPVs underneath that. Once we scale these companies, they need to shoot out SPVs underneath. And for those matters, it's other types of investors, and we connect the dots there, right? So get more infrastructural types of investors in, and basically prepare them for the financial journey that they're on as well.
Yeah, we'll just jump to Anupam again for an investor perspective. You know, like you guys have different risk appetites and timelines as well. So curious about how that changes, what you expect from your companies, and again, that capital stack.
As a family office that has an evergreen fund, we have the ability to invest across asset classes. We're also a little bit nerdy on really trying to understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and what are the different solutions, and what are the things in the value chain that actually need to connect in order to create impact at scale. For us, that translates to then we also need to be willing to invest in different asset classes. Sometimes it may be very early stage, sometimes it may be a venture-like investment, but infrastructure scale, because it's a first-of-a-kind plant that really starts to demonstrate what the capacity available is. And so that flexibility is quite important, at least in our view of how we create long-term value creation. And then having great partners, because we know we don't do this alone. So having other investors to go in with that may be specialists in certain asset classes, but we can work across all of them.
Nice, okay. And Sarah, as a founder, how has your approach to raising capital, securing capital, changed over the years? And yeah, do you see these different types of capital like working together well?
That's a good question. I'm currently not fundraising, so I don't know how the sentiment at this stage is in the investment circles. What I really care about in my company, in our growth story of our company, is creating as much of impact in our industry as fast as possible. Like that's what we are here for. That's what we started off as founders. That's why our employees, our team is standing behind, really creating an impact in this whole new industry of battery recycling to really regenerate the materials as fast as possible. Yeah. So scale, 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 even though it's very difficult, setting up your first of a kind and going beyond that is difficult. It takes a lot of time. And what I hear now in the sentiment of the investor world is, where are your revenues? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just scaling everything from lab scales, like the testing tubes from university, all the way to 5,000-liter reactors within 3 years with so little capital, and you're asking me for 1 or 2 digit of million of revenues. That's a bit, I would say, mismatched. And I think that investor did not understand the fundamentals of infrastructure play. What are the different stages, and what are really the checklists for each stage? And I think like true investors who really dive deep into it, they understand. So I'm not going to waste my time kind of educating those investors who are looking for revenues. Hey, invest in Lovable. Maybe you missed that train. Invest in the next Lovable that is able to generate a lot of revenues in a very short time, but it's a different play. Yeah. Right? And we believe if we make that scale happen and create that blueprint of future battery recycling, that is a huge impact. That is a huge return over 100, maybe 1,000 times of return to the fund if we make that happen.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, are you the investor who would have invested SpaceX day one? Scary, but it's a whole life-changing for the planet. So I'm just focusing on traction.
Yeah.
Can we scale that? And the true investor will understand the traction that we have basically behind us.
I do want to come back to your scaling ambitions, because I know it's something we talked about at length on the call, but Anupam, do you want to just jump in quickly?
Yeah, I just want to add that it's also important as investors that we bring more than only capital. Because whether you're trying to scale up a first-of-a-kind plant or demonstrate a new technology, sometimes what entrepreneurs don't have is the connectivity in the ecosystem, the supply chain, the offtake agreements, and the ability to negotiate all of that is something that investors can bring to the table. And for us, as we see ourselves as business builders, then that's something that we intend to also roll up our sleeves and help the entrepreneurs with.
Maybe I can jump in here. What I love about investors who help unlock new doors. Can you talk to the bank for me? You know, like, can you try to get some debt and loans for my business? Because they probably take you more serious than me, because I'm still very tiny and small. I have no revenues to show, so totally agree. Door openers.
Nice, thank you. And also, I did a very bad job of mentioning the Q&A function. So please, if you have questions, throw them into Slido and we can come to them at the end. But you know, it's day 2, so I assume you all knew that already. Anyway, Sarah, you talked a lot about your scaling ambitions when we had our sort of pre-panel chat. And Morten, you had a really interesting perspective on how the VC landscape is changing in general, like how portfolios will look different in terms of there being one outlier that sort of subsidizes the rest of the fund. But with hard tech, with this kind of new climate landscape that we find ourselves in, you were kind of saying that that would be a little bit more equal. Do you want to dive into that a little bit more? And then Sarah, you had a lot on your ambitions. So.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Of course, just mentioning Lovable and other so-called outliers. The model in hard tech is a little bit different, I think. And I think we need to acknowledge the fact that not all 20 or 25 investments in our portfolio can become 100 or 200x returner. And the model fundamentally is a little bit different. It's still going to deliver the same fund returns we anticipate, but it's going to be a different return distribution, right? So we won't have 15 companies that will go bust, and then 5 or 8 that will carry it all through, or 20 companies that will go bust and 3 that will make it. We would rather have 5 or 7 or 8 that will go bust, and then we will have a lot of 1x, 2x, 3x's, and 5x's, and then you might have a handful that returns 10 to 30x or something. Carrying the full fund home at the same level as the classical outlier model, but fundamentally with a lower risk, right? So being a little bit nerdy about it, you could say, you know, comparing the risk-adjusted return, which is called the Sharpe ratio, we would deliver a higher Sharpe ratio than a normal fund, right? So that's the long answer, a little nerdy, yeah.
I love that perspective. Like, even though there seems to be a cooling, what you're saying is actually ClimateTech is a safer bet now more than ever because of how it'll all shake out down the line. Yeah. Okay, Sarah, tell me about you and your growth ambitions. Do you think that this is ambitious enough? Should we not all be doing 100x, but all of the portfolio?
I think like founders naturally are a little bit more naive and just dream really big.
Yeah.
I think there's like the safe bet in communication. I think we can do much more, right? I believe the LPs out there give these guys more money, and so that they can give us more money to grow faster and more. I truly believe that we have way more potential here in Europe. Maybe fun fact, over a third, or even in some domains, over 50% of climate tech patents are created here in Europe. So like, let's make money out of it, not like just drop the patents over to the US and they make money out of it, which they're really good in. Yeah, so our growth potential is, I mean, within the last 3 years of total 14.5 million euro equity financing, we managed to scale all the way from lab to industrial scale. Currently, we're setting up our first of a kind plant in a chemical industrial park, which is very new for our team. We're learning about compliance and safety and how to kind of behave in an industrial park. Huge mind shift. People actually have to wear helmets and safety clothings. Once we manage that, once we go online and really demonstrate 1 week of running 24/7, 3 shifts, people working from day and night, to 1 month, to 3 months, to 6 months, then we have a blueprint of a plant that we hope to have within 1 or 2 years. With that blueprint, we can literally build plants all over the world. We're not just located here because our technology is agnostic to battery waste types. So we can plug and play and work with any battery recycler out there. So we see ourselves as integrators. We can go locally at other battery recycling facilities or even the car companies, the battery manufacturers. So we have already really good conversations there. And the need is very high already today. Although in our industry, I think you also are well aware, by 2030, there's going to be a tsunami of battery waste. So we're going to be ready by then.
Nice. And Anupam, do you want to just build on that a little bit further? So you talked about connecting the dots before. Sarah is obviously talking about spinning up at an industrial park. How important is it to have that relationship with customers from the get-go? Yeah.
I've always believed it's super important to follow your customers, especially your lead customers, because Sarah's solution works best if she already knows who the off-takers for her product are going to be, and also has a clear insight into where she's going to get the feedstock from, and has established those relationships. I think that applies in so many different industries and solution sets that you're going for. So that is part of the value creation. And I think if you're doing single point investing, maybe that company that you've invested in will be successful, but the impact that that company is trying to deliver will also only happen if that whole system is actually working effectively and that value chain is actually connected.
Nice, thank you. So I guess, Sarah, you talked a little bit about building your technology here, but actually it's agnostic, you can scale globally. But in the context of European climate tech companies, what role do they play in building resilience on the continent right now, given wider geopolitics? I'm happy for anyone to jump in. Who wants to take it?
I can start out with a comment here, right? So being a climate tech fund, having been through a hype and a dip and whatnot so far the last five years' time, I think it's fair to say that we've done the same stuff all along the way, but now I think we tilted to call it more resilience tech or whatever, right?
The branding again.
So I think a lot of the stuff we essentially do and invest in is supply chain resilience, it's energy system and infrastructure resilience and all these things, right? So I think it's actually even hard for me to think of one of the investments we've done that is not somehow building on the European resilience. We're a Europe fund only, so that makes it kind of easy, right? Yeah.
Okay, nice. Sarah, do you want to go?
Yeah, you just dropped the word branding, right? I think like in our industry, it's actually true. So it's not only branding. Last month we saw China closing down one of the largest lithium mines, and within just 3 days, the lithium price spiked by 30%. So actually our customers, so we are listening to customers, we're already engaging with lots of customers, and we already shipped pilot products to our customers. They are coming to us. Hey, when are you scaling faster and faster? We cannot rely our feedstock, which is currently almost 100% by Chinese imports, because they need to plan their cost structures. And we're in the cement industry, ceramics industry, glass manufacturing, and much more that are highly dependent on these critical raw materials. So it's really true in our industry. Geopolitical pressure is higher than ever. You never know what the Chinese government is going to do. You never know what Trump administration is going to do regarding sanctions. And you never know how the monopoly play within the Chinese mining industry is manipulating the rest of the world. So we really need to push forward and have more sovereignty. So we really live on that wave. I mean, it's very beneficial for us. Yeah, so it's really real for us.
Thank you. Anupam?
I think what I would add is, with all of the geopolitical uncertainty and increasing nationalism and protectionism that Sarah just alluded to, there's an opportunity as well to build resilient local supply chains. And net, when you're doing something good for the environment, as we're doing with ClimateTech, you also don't want lots of detractors from that as well. So if you have local supply chains that are actually resilient, in the end, that will also be better for the environment. So, of course, there's a lot of disruption that we're all dealing with right now as a result. Let's hope it settles at a better new normal in the future.
So what areas do you think Europe could be leaders within when it comes to climate and resilience technology? Morten?
We look at a lot of areas, and I don't think the dip or anything like that has lowered the deal flow we see and the number of interesting areas. You alluded to it really, both your last comments, right, to critical raw materials as being a growing area and a more and more important area, but even sectors hard to abate from an emissions point of view, sectors like steel, cement, heavy mobility and stuff like that, that's also something that we see interest in. Of course, from our DNA, energy infrastructure, grid storage and things like that. And even if we take it more towards the food and ag sector, where we have indeed seen hype within sub areas of that, we're also looking at things optimistically, right? So this is a bad example, and this is actually not something we are very deeply in looking at now, but just as an example, vertical farming, right? You know, that also went through a hype cycle, and basically there are a number of these areas within some of the critical industries that will not go away, that will stay fundamental for a number of reasons. And when you have a period like this where you see a dip, suddenly the prices are down and the tourists are gone. So it's, to some extent, it's a really interesting time to look at a lot of areas, right? So to pick up some of the fundamental important areas, but at very interesting prices.
Anupam, do you want to jump in?
The only thing I could add to that is it's a great time to be an investor. You just need to have the foresight and the staying power to help your portfolio companies actually get to their goals.
Do you think that the climate investors that sit tight in this moment in time are the ones that are going to come out on top versus, you know, these tourists, generalists sort of chasing whatever hype cycle might be happening?
I'm super biased, right? So I think you can guess my answer, right?
Sure.
But
I'm not sure I can add a lot to that.
Sarah, do you have anything to add just on what's been talked about?
No, I think like just give the investors more money to invest into the real tech that will transform the industries. So I'm super bullish in it. Yeah, and really have that foresight. Let's have that 10-year, 20-year perspective. And let's churn around the industries that are 50, 100 years old.
Yeah. Morten, you said that you just raised a new fund. No?
we are raising a fund.
You're raising your new...
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you convince LPs that ClimateTech is still the bet?
Well, I think one of the points in that, which is fundraising is notoriously very difficult at the moment, has been for a while. I think one of the core points is basically to what you're exactly saying here. If you have to convince the investors too much and do a too hard convincing and job in convincing, they're probably not the right investors. What we have seen on the other side of Trump and what's happened over the last 6 months is basically like being a European-focused fund on what we could call resilience or climate, I don't care. Being such an animal, it's inevitable that we've seen a lot of traction from European investors. Even larger investors, I would say, are suddenly knocking on the door. I'm not trying to say that it's not super hard to fundraise. It is. Yeah. But I'm saying the sentiment shift over the last 6-12 months has been very notable. And I think the investors are looking, at least within our scene, are looking for non-tourists. They're looking for someone who is sticking to, focusing on the fundamentals and all what we've talked about. So, yeah.
Okay, nice. We talked a little bit about, I guess, a more hands-on investing approach as well. So, Sarah, you like help from your investors, sort of accessing industries or people that you might not necessarily have had contacts with. Do we want to dig into that a little bit more? Like, for the investors, what is like the one thing you wish founders approaching you knew that you could help with that they don't necessarily know already? And Sarah, for yourself, what do you really want investors to help you with?
I can maybe quickly jump in from my past experience, because we already have quite a few investors in our cap table. We got one lead investor who led the seed round in us last year, Nordic Ninja. They have lots of great connections in Japan, and we literally spent with the partner himself a week fully in Japan and opening all the doors of all the traditional Japanese corporates, and actually sitting down, for example, with the CTO of Panasonic. That's something that I, as a founder, just don't happen to do. Sure. And being really in the C-suite with such an individual, and having those opening door moments to corporates that can unlock infinite kind of business opportunities. So that's something that I really look into. So the next investors I want to get into the cap table, really securing supply, securing infrastructure, network. Maybe you have a network of suppliers where to buy all the machines, because we as a hardware, we really are constrained with delivery times. So waiting for a machine for 6, 12, maybe 18 months is very fundamental and can impact the company very severely. So if an investor has a great network of suppliers, that's amazing. But also offtake, right? Okay. So anything that's around the business model, help us that, or even unlocking the next fundraising capital door that I'm not exposed to, because these investors need to talk to each other, and can you push 2.0 forward to the next financing circles? That would be awesome.
Right. Anupam?
I think the best advice I would give is someone who has spent his career building and running and scaling, sometimes scaling businesses, sometimes not, is be very focused on your value proposition. And make sure it's something that sticks, and focus on that value proposition and first revenues, because when there is demand for something that you're producing, then you naturally end up with the high-class problem of how do I possibly keep up with the demand? And then the rest of it will sort itself out. But if the value proposition isn't sharp, then you can be a master at all the rest of it, and none of it really matters.
But for founders approaching you for potential investment, what's like the one thing that they don't realize you can help with that you would like people to know more about?
That we could help them ensure that they are part of a cohesive value chain.
Okay.
That actually together deliver something.
The
and
big
therefore
picture.
It should be one of those value chains that we've chosen to focus on.
Right. Morten?
Well, to what Abunam just said, I fully agree in the points. And to the last part of your question, I think it is definitely to guide founders to understand that they need already now to build the right network and connections to the types of investors and collaborators they need to engage with in 2-3 rounds from now, basically. It goes without saying that's the same kind of task you have on the customer side, right? But I think building those things are very early on is super crucial.
Yeah, great. So I will stop talking and, well, I have to read them out, so I will stop asking you my own questions. But we have some on Slido, so don't forget, if you do want to ask something, please get them in now, just because we only have 5 minutes left. So we'll just start at the top. What are the most exciting companies that you guys have recently invested in? And Sarah, what other startups in the climate space have caught your eye recently? We'll start with you, Sarah, just for the end question, and then go to the others.
Oh, I'm super biased, right? I'm in the battery recycling space, material space, and critical raw material space. I'm actually looking out for, so it's not something I've seen yet, really a startup that mastered recycling of solar panels or permanent magnets for wind turbines. We can debate whether or not the market is ready or not, but I'm very fascinated about such kind of technology.
So if that's you, say hello at the end. Anupam, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I will give Sarah a plug. One of our exciting investments is in another company that has a battery recycling technology called Ascend Elements. Mm-hmm. And we need multiple companies in this space to be successful for it to take hold. And just for a different flavor, we think storage is absolutely essential beyond just batteries and lithium-ion batteries as we know them, but long-duration energy storage. So we have a very exciting investment in the UK with Highview Power, who is developing and commercializing a compressed air storage technology that we think is quite exciting and key to unlocking energy storage at scale.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Morten, most exciting investment?
Yeah, I'm thinking here because I want to say something else than battery tech and storage. So let me pick two very different ones. And being a hard tech investor, sometimes people think it's boring stuff we're looking at. It's super exciting. Maybe on the headline it sounds a bit boring. So let me take the latest investment we did is an industrial heat pump play.
Yeah.
Very high temperature heat pumps. On the headline, super boring. On the technical stuff, extremely exciting. And then probably I just want to highlight, it's not the most recent investment we did, but the most sexy investment I think we have done is a nuclear fusion reactor investment in a Swedish company called Novatron Fusion Group. Very, very exciting stuff. It's basically that kind of technology can solve most problems we're looking at right now.
Yeah. And actually, the fact that you wanted to say battery storage and recycling speaks to how important the topic is at the moment, especially for like long-term planning. So yeah, we have 2 minutes left, so we'll take a forward-facing question, I think. So yeah, how do you see value chains changing in the next 10 years? Morten, we'll start with you and then just go down the line.
Well, I think the whole geopolitical picture that is being painted as we speak will have an effect on value chains, and I think the regionalization, going from globalization to decentralized or regionalization is one of the biggest effects on value chains that we'll see over the coming years. So I think securing a well-functioning value chains within your subject matter and where you operate is going to be way more important than we've seen so far.
Nice, which involves critical materials.
Definitely agree. So like, it's also hindering us to expand in a sense of the old style of thinking of just centralizing it, thinking very global, but actually we have to go local. So if we want to tap into the North American market, the Middle East market, or Southeast Asia, we have to go there. Yeah. It's not like that we can transport materials globally anymore, so that's something going to be very localized.
Right. Anupam?
I think you're all familiar with the saying, never let a crisis go to waste. But I think 10 years from now, we could actually have a much more sustainable supply chain and value chain across the globe, much more localized and regionalized. But I think actually helping connect the dots in that value chain, especially where they're broken today in certain industries such as plastics recycling, is an opportunity for both entrepreneurs and investors to create real value.
Awesome. Well, that is time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for my wonderful panel. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you.